Have you ever been deep into a workout or a long day and wondered, how on earth is my body still going? That initial burst of energy is long gone, but you're still moving. Well, the secret is your body's ability to tap into its ultimate fuel source. We're going to dive into the incredible science of how your body turns fat into pure, sustainable energy.
Yeah, we all know that feeling, right? That rush you get from carbs is great, but it's a rush. It doesn't last. So what takes over? What allows you to push through for the long haul? It's your body's secret weapon, the absolutely massive and, let's be honest, often untapped power of its fat stores.
To really get a picture of this, think of it like this. Your carbohydrate stores, which are mostly glycogen in your muscles, they're like a small snack drawer at your desk. Super convenient for a quick boost, but it empties out fast. Your fat stores, on the other hand, that's a colossal energy warehouse. We're talking about a fuel reserve so vast it could literally power you for days, not just minutes.
So, how does this incredible energy get from, say, our lunch, or from our body's own reserves, all the way to our muscles when they're screaming for fuel? Well, it's quite a journey. Let's start by following the path of the fat we actually eat.
Okay, so when you eat something with fat, your small intestine gets to work, breaking it down into tiny little droplets. These can't just float around freely, so they get packaged into these protein-coated carriers called chylomicrons. They hop into your bloodstream and make their way to the liver. And the liver, it acts like a central dispatch center. It repackages the fats into lipoproteins, you've probably heard of these, like HDL and LDL, which are basically transport taxis, delivering fuel all over your body.
So that covers the fat from our last meal. But what about that giant energy warehouse we were just talking about? How does our body actually get into its own stored fat for fuel, especially when we need it most, like during a tough workout?
All right, this is where it gets really cool. The moment you start exercising, your fight-or-flight system kicks in. It releases hormones like adrenaline. These hormones are basically the key that unlocks your fat cells. They flip a switch on an enzyme that starts breaking down your stored triglycerides, releasing what we call free fatty acids into your blood. But they can't travel alone, so they hitch a ride on a transport protein called albumin, which acts like a shuttle bus, taking them directly to your hungry muscles.
Okay, so the fuel has arrived at its destination, the muscle. But the real magic, the part where we actually get energy, happens once it gets inside the cell. We've got to zoom way in, right down to the cell's powerhouse.
So, the fatty acid made it inside the muscle cell, but it's not at the furnace yet. To get turned into usable energy, it has to get inside the mitochondria. And the thing about the mitochondria is, it has a very strict door policy. You can't just wander in.
This is where a super important molecule called carnitine steps in. Think of it as the VIP escort. It meets the fatty acid at the mitochondrial door, grabs it, and personally walks it across the membrane to where all the action happens. Seriously, without carnitine, that fat is just stuck outside, completely useless as fuel.
Now, once it's inside, the fatty acid goes through a process called beta oxidation. I know, it sounds complicated, but I love this analogy for it. Just picture that long fatty acid chain as a salami. Beta oxidation is like a machine that just slices off these perfect 2-carbon chunks, one after another. Each one of those little slices becomes a molecule called acetyl-CoA. And that molecule is the universal ticket to get into the Krebs cycle, the main engine of energy production in your body.
So, what's the big payoff for this whole complicated process? It is absolutely massive. A single, typical fatty acid molecule can generate an incredible 129 molecules of ATP. That's the energy currency of your cells. To put that in perspective, one molecule of glucose only gets you about 32 ATP. This huge difference is exactly why fat is such a powerful, dense, long-term fuel.
Now, this whole system is just incredibly efficient. But what happens when fat burning goes into absolute overdrive? Your body actually has an even cleverer backup system for that scenario. Let's talk about ketones.
Think about it. You're slicing the salami so fast that the Krebs cycle, the next step in the assembly line, just gets totally overwhelmed with all that acetyl-CoA. There's a traffic jam. Does your body just waste all that potential energy? No way. It pivots to a brilliant plan B.
So the liver takes all that excess acetyl-CoA and cleverly converts it into something else, ketone bodies. These are special, water-soluble fuel molecules. And what makes them so unbelievably critical is that, unlike fatty acids, ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier. This provides a vital backup energy source for your brain when glucose is scarce. It's a total lifesaver.
So when does this actually happen? Well, your body flips the ketone switch anytime carbohydrate availability gets really, really low. We're talking about situations like very long, grueling exercise, extended periods of fasting, or when someone is intentionally following a very low-carb or ketogenic diet. It's the body's ultimate survival hack to make sure the brain always has fuel.
Okay, so we've seen how our body mobilizes and burns fat for energy on a microscopic level. This incredible science has some really direct implications for something a lot of us think about, our body composition. So let's zoom back out and talk about the huge difference between just weight and actual body fat.
It is so important to get this distinction right. Overweight just means you weigh more than some standard chart says you should for your height. But obese is a clinical term that refers specifically to having an excessive and unhealthy amount of body fat. Think about it. A super muscular bodybuilder could easily be classified as overweight, but they obviously aren't obese. The number on the scale just doesn't tell the whole story.
So, if the scale is lying to us, how do we get the real story? Well, there are a bunch of different methods. As you can see, they range from old-school things like underwater weighing and skin-fold calipers to more modern tech like bioelectrical impedance, or BIA, which sends a tiny current through your body, and of course, DEXA scans, which are pretty much the gold standard for accuracy these days.
The most important thing here is having a target for good health. I mean, elite athlete numbers are way lower, but for general health, the guidelines are pretty clear. Men should aim to stay below about 25% body fat, and for women, the benchmark is below 30%. These are just really solid numbers to keep in mind for your long-term well-being.
And this brings us to a really powerful point from a classic study. They looked at groups who used diet alone, exercise alone, or a mix of both. And while all the groups lost about the same amount of weight, this quote reveals the kicker. Only the groups that included exercise actually lost significant body fat while holding on to their lean muscle. It just brilliantly shows that exercise is the real catalyst for changing your body's composition, not just the number on the scale.
So, we'll end with this question for you. You now understand the amazing, intricate process your body uses to unlock its ultimate fuel source. Knowing all this, how might that change the way you think about your energy, your health, and especially how you approach your very next workout? Thanks so much for tuning in.